Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're delving into a case that shook South Africa to its core, a case so brutal that even seasoned paramedics were left horrified. This is the story of Henry van Breda, who annihilated his own family with an axe. Please note that this video contains sensitive material, so viewer discretion is advised. Imagine a family that seems to have it all: wealth, a luxurious home, and a life many would envy. That was the Van Breda family. They lived in the De Zout's Golf Estate, an upscale gated community in South Africa's wine region, Stellenbosch. This was a place where safety and opulence were practically guaranteed. The family had recently relocated from Melbourne, Australia, to South Africa. Martin van Breda, the patriarch, had business interests that brought them back to their roots. Teresa, his wife, was keen on being closer to her family. Their children, Henry, Rudy, and Marley, seemed to be adapting well to their new environment. But you know what they say: all that glitters is not gold. Behind the closed doors of their lavish home, the Van Breda family was grappling with issues that were far from picture perfect. Henry, the youngest son, had dropped out of his studies and was taking a gap year with no clear direction. His parents were concerned about his lack of ambition and possible drug addiction. They even threatened to cut off his allowance if he didn't clean up his act. So, while they projected an image of unity and happiness, the Van Bredas were a boiling pot of familial tension, unspoken expectations, and dark secrets. And it was only a matter of time before this pressure cooker exploded into a nightmare that no one could have ever predicted. Picture this: it's January 27, 2015, a date that will forever be etched in the annals of South African crime history. The sun had set over the De Zout's Golf Estate, casting long shadows over the Van Breda residence. Inside, the family was settling in for the night, completely unaware that it would be their last together. The attacker, armed with an axe, moved with a chilling combination of speed and determination. The air was thick with tension, punctuated by the horrifying sounds of an axe striking flesh and bone. Martin, the loving father, and Teresa, the caring mother, were found lifeless in a pool of their own blood. Rudy, their eldest son, shared the same tragic fate. Marley, the 16-year-old daughter, fought for her life and, against all odds, survived. She was left with extensive injuries and self-defense wounds that told a story of a desperate struggle for survival. And then there was Henry, the youngest son. He emerged from this nightmarish ordeal with only minor injuries, a detail that would later raise eyebrows and questions. This wasn't just an attack, it was a massacre. A family torn apart, a home turned into a crime scene, and a community left in utter disbelief. The assailant didn't just kill, he shattered the illusion of safety and security that the Van Bredas and their neighbors had so dearly held. Imagine walking into a scene so gruesome. It haunts your nightmares for the rest of your life. That's exactly what happened to Christian Kogelenberg, a paramedic with nearly 4 decades of experience. When he says this was the worst he had ever witnessed, you know it's not an exaggeration. The Van Breda home, once a sanctuary filled with love and laughter, had turned into a house of horrors. Blood wasn't just spattered, it flowed like a waterfall down the stairs, in Kogelenberg's own chilling words. The walls, the floors, even the ceiling bore witness to the unimaginable brutality that had unfolded. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie, but this was no fiction. This was a family destroyed, their lives cut short in the most violent way imaginable. The sheer force of the blows, the extent of the injuries, it all pointed to an assailant who intended not just to kill, but to annihilate. For Kogelenberg, who had seen the aftermath of accidents, crimes, and natural disasters, this was different. This was personal, intimate, and carried out with a level of savagery that defied all logic and humanity. The crime scene told a story, not just of a family killed, but of a sanctuary violated, of boundaries crossed in the most horrifying way. It was a scene that would haunt investigators, first responders, and indeed, an entire nation, for years to come. Imagine being the sole survivor of a massacre that wiped out your entire family. That's the position Henry van Breda found himself in. In the immediate aftermath, he told a story that seemed plausible, especially given South Africa's high crime rate. A well-built black intruder, he said, had invaded their home and committed the atrocities. Henry even added a layer of heroism to his account, claiming he had wrestled with the intruder in a desperate attempt to protect his family. But here's where things get murky. As detectives started piecing together the puzzle, the cracks in Henry's narrative began to show. For one, his injuries were minor, almost superficial, especially when compared to the devastating wounds inflicted upon his family. And then there were the inconsistencies. Why would an intruder hell-bent on robbery bypass valuable items on the lower floors to commit a killing spree upstairs? Why were there no signs of forced entry? How did Henry escape the kind of deep, fatal wounds that his family couldn't? As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the inconsistencies piled up, turning Henry's initial story from a tragic account into a web of suspicious details. It was becoming increasingly clear that the well-built black intruder might not exist at all. and that the real story could be far more complicated and sinister than anyone had initially thought. Picture this: a courtroom buzzing with anticipation, journalists scribbling notes, and a community waiting for justice. At the center of it all is Henry Van Breda, a young man who had been living under a cloud of suspicion for 67 grueling days. He sat in the courtroom, listening to testimonies that seemed to tighten the noose around his neck. Henry was steadfast, almost defiant, in maintaining his innocence. He looked on as experts took the stand, one after another, poking holes in his story. The most damning evidence: many of his injuries appeared to be self-inflicted. That's right, the cuts and bruises that he claimed were from a struggle with an intruder were likely done by his own hand. It was a revelation that sent shockwaves through the courtroom. But the blows to Henry's defense didn't stop there. Security experts were called in to assess the likelihood of a break-in at the Van Breda residence. Their conclusion was jaw-dropping. They stated that the estate was so secure that not even the legendary escape artist Houdini could have broken it. This was a home equipped with motion detectors, an alarm system, 24-hour guard patrols, and an electric fence. So, if Houdini couldn't have done it, who could? The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with tension. Each piece of evidence seemed to further isolate Henry, making his initial story appear more and more like a desperate fabrication. As the trial days ticked by, the question on everyone's mind was clear: if Henry didn't do it, then how could all of this evidence be explained away? The motive, the ever-elusive why that haunts every true crime story. In Henry Van Breda's case, the motive is like a puzzle missing its most crucial pieces. Some whispered that Henry was after his father's multi-million-dollar estate, a fortune so vast it could make anyone's head spin. But here's the kicker: this theory was never proven. It's like a shadow lurking in the background, visible but intangible. Henry was often described as the black sheep of the family, while his siblings thrived academically and socially. Henry seemed to be on a different path. He dropped out of his studies and moved back with his parents, taking what he called a gap year. But it wasn't a gap year filled with travel or self-discovery. It was a year that seemed aimless, directionless. And then there's the issue of drugs. Rumors swirled that Henry had a drug problem, a vice that had become a point of contention within the family. His parents, loving but strict, had reportedly threatened to cut off his allowance if he didn't clean up his act. Could the pressure of living up to the Van Breda name have pushed him over the edge? So, we're left with more questions than answers. Was it greed? Was it resentment? Was it a cry for help gone horribly wrong? The motive remains a murky abyss, a dark corner of Henry's psyche that we may never fully understand. And so, we arrive at the climax of this harrowing tale, the verdict. On June 5, 2018, the courtroom was a cauldron of tension. You could cut the air with a knife. Henry Van Breda, the young man at the center of this storm, awaited his fate. Judge Suraj Desai, a seasoned jurist, took his seat and the room fell silent. With a voice that carried the weight of justice, Judge Desai declared Henry guilty on all counts. 3 counts of murder. The words echoed in the courtroom, each syllable a hammer blow to any lingering doubts. Henry's face, once a mask of youthful innocence, crumbled. The gravity of his actions, the irrevocable shattering of his family, had finally caught up with him. But the judge didn't stop there. Henry was immediately taken into custody, the clang of the prison cell door serving as a grim punctuation to his life as he knew it. And then came the sentence that sealed his fate: life in prison. No parole, no second chances. Henry Van Breda would spend the rest of his days behind bars, a living testament to the horror he had unleashed. In that moment, the courtroom was a microcosm of society's struggle with crime, justice, and morality. The verdict served as a grim reminder that sometimes monsters lurk where we least expect them, even within the walls of a home, behind the facade of a perfect family. As we reach the end of this dark and twisted tale, we're left grappling with questions that may never have satisfying answers. What dark forces churned in the depths of Henry's mind, compelling him to commit such an unthinkable act? Could anyone or anything have intervened to prevent this family from spiraling into tragedy? And then there's the question that haunts us all. What does this case reveal about the society we're a part of? A society where even a family that seems to epitomize success and happiness can be shattered in the blink of an eye. These questions linger, like ghosts in the night, challenging our understanding of family, security, and the human psyche. Thank you for joining me on this harrowing journey through the labyrinth of human emotions and actions that defy comprehension. If this story has impacted you, if it's made you ponder the complexities of life, justice, and the human condition, then I urge you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell. Your engagement helps us bring more such true crime stories into the light. Let's not just be passive observers. Let's strive, each in our own way, to make the world a little less dark, a little more just. Until we meet again in another story, another exploration of the human soul, stay safe, stay aware, and take care of each other.